Previously, we installed the third-party EDS file for our Siemens Scalance Ethernet switch, and we added it to our I/O configuration in Studio 5000. And we discovered that Ethernet switch :I data 01 was power source 1, and 3 was power source 2, and whether our ports were active or not was in 2. And as a vendor, we could simply send a spreadsheet and tell people, this one right here is port 1, this one right here is port 2, and so forth. That's not going to make for the greatest user experience. So in addition to having an EDS file so we can add it into Studio 5000, if we also include an add-on instruction that will do all that formatting for them, it's going to make them that much more satisfied with it. So let's talk quickly about what add-on instructions are and the main two purposes I see to use them. An add-on instruction really is going to make a custom instruction that you can do all the bulky things that we need to do to kind of piece things together behind the scenes, and then our user can drag one simple instruction down. That's use number one. That's for vendors who are really integrating third-party hardware into Studio. The other is for code uniformity. So let's say we need to do the exact same thing 200 times. We can make an add-on instruction. That way our code is always uniform. And I'm going to show you some really cool things you can do by doing that when it comes to troubleshooting compared to if we just made a bunch of duplicate code. So let's go ahead and create another Studio 5000 program. And in fact, vendors, I'm going to strongly urge you to do this. I'm going to right-click Studio 5000 in the taskbar and just select Component of Logic Designer. And we're using a 1769 L16ER BB1B if you're using our standard trainer. I actually have an L18 on this video trainer. And I'm going to call this my Ethernet switch AOI. And I'm going to do this in version 36 for what we're doing. You could use any version. And our standard trainer has 0 modules, but I have 2 on this one. I'm going to hit finish. And then inside of assets, we see add-on instructions. We're going to right-click add-on instructions, new add-on instruction, and we're going to call this Scalance. And we'll come back to the description because I want us to see a few things. But one, you could select a language here. And I have to be honest, if I was actually packaging this up, I probably would do this one in structured text. This one's going to really, in fact, I'm tempted now to do it in structured text. But no, we're going to do it in ladder because that's what most of you can be more familiar with. But this is a good example of really, we probably would want to do this in structured text, and we would tidy up in an add-on instruction just to make it, so that people aren't having to deal with that. That's going to bring up this dialog box here. And what I want to talk about is this description area and the extended description text. You'll almost never see these used, and I want to make sure we understand why. Is if we put some text here, let's just put subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, you ought to. And we go over to help, then we're going to get that little bit of text right here saying that. So best case is probably to put a really short, helpful link right here because even these links won't be clickable in Studio 5000. And then you have your description text here, and I'm just going to put here is the description. And if we go down a little bit, but here's the description goes in the extended description. Now the issue is, a picture is so useful when we're trying to describe what's going on, and you can't put it in here. So you almost always see these blank as far as the extended description. And best case is some link to tell them where to find documentation about this. All right, next we're going to create some parameters here. Now, I said we wanted to do a separate one because I want to make sure you don't accidentally do something. I see this in a lot of third-party vendor programs is if you do some finagling, you can manage to make a parameter that is actually tied to this tag coming out of this I/O configuration. Now, the issue with that is that means whoever uses your add-on instruction has to actually make a tag that is named Ethernet_switch. And if they We even want to add a second Ethernet switch, which hopefully you want them to sell multiple devices. Only one of them's going to work. That's why we want you to develop this completely separate, because this thing has to be able to work completely on its own and be imported in. Okay, so now we can fill out some tags. And for our basic Ethernet switch on our PLC trainer, we're going to have power source 1, and that is going to be a Boolean tag. And then the usage is whether we're going to be bringing this into the add-on instruction or whether we're going to get it out. And this is something we're going to get it out of it. This is going to be a result that we want to tell people. And then we're just going to copy that power source 1, and we're going to make a power source 2, and it will also be an output parameter, and then it'll be Boolean. And then let's create a port 1. It'll also be an output parameter, and it'll be Boolean. Now we want to copy this port 1, and we're going to paste it down to port 8. And then for all of those, we're going to select output for our parameter type. And then for our data type on all of them, we're going to select a Boolean tag. And this is going to get us through what we need for the add-on instruction for this Ethernet switch. But I want us to think a little bit more about the big picture is how many different varieties of this Ethernet switch are there? And can we make one add-on instruction that with minor tweaks can cover all of those? Because I talked to a lot of you vendors out there and you're like, hey, can you look at this add-on instruction? We have this one that works and we have this one that doesn't. And I kind of look under the hood and I'm like, hey, this is almost the same add-on instruction. Why did you write this one this way and this one this way? And it's always, hey, we had someone else write that one. So what we're going to do, and honestly, if you have the 8-port, you can just watch this part. You don't have to go through, but I think this will be a good exercise, is we're going to make this add-on instruction cover all of the Scalance Ethernet switches. And so their biggest one is this 32-port monster here, which, yeah, I really want to find some cool use. I don't have a use for it, but Josh Vargas had it at his Traceroute Con, and I got to play with it. So we're going to continue adding ports down here through port 32. And that's going to get us looking like this. Now, make sure that your usage is all on outputs on these, and your data type on all of those is Boolean. Now, we need one more parameter because these are all the outputs. And with the exception of where they're enabled, we have nothing inputting. We're not bringing anything into this add-on instruction. So let's go back and look at our program from the previous video. And this is what we actually want to bring in, this data right here. So we're going to make one more tag, and note this SINT in this bracket, 18 bracket. So let's go back over here, and at the bottom, we're going to type data, and this is actually going to be an input-output parameter. And actually, let me explain why that is. If we leave it an input parameter, because arguably that's all we're using it for, and we'll use the dialog box. I know typically you type here, but we're going to use the dialog box, and we're going to go find the SINT, and that bracket 18 bracket is actually this dim0. But if it's a strictly input parameter, it's not going to let you change it. Now we make this an input-output parameter, and then we go back in here and we type SINT. Now we can make dim018, click OK, and that makes it look just like it did over there. So let's click OK to that. And then inside of your Scalance, under Assets, Add-on Instructions, find Logic. We're going to double click the logic, and let's bring down a go look for a 1 and an output energize. Coincidentally, since we named it data, now this is completely coincidental, we know that power source 1 was data 0, 1. Well, let's just copy that. We can come over here and we can paste it in. And that is going to be power source. Now, let's go ahead and make sure we see this. Since we created these parameters, we can actually see all of them right here. And we're going to grab power source 1. Okay, now we're going to copy that rung and paste it. And we know 3 is power source 2. So we'll go ahead and put it on power source 2. Well, let's paste that again. And if we go back over to our file, we found that our port information was on 2. So data 2.0 is going to be port 1 in here. So port 1. And now let's just copy and paste this and go ahead and just do it 7 times and then start going through so that 1 will be port 2, 2 will be port 3, and just keep that going all the way down through here. And this arguably finishes up our XC208 Ethernet switch on our PLC trainer, but we want to go for that 32-port monster over here. So the next group of them right here is going to be data 3. So now we can highlight these and copy all 8 of those data 2 ones. And then we're going to right click and we're going to paste them. We'll be let's go ahead and change all our data 2s of that second set to data 3s. And then on the right side, data 30, that's going to be port 8. And go on down through here, port 9, all the way to port 16. And then let's do it one more time. We're going to highlight from port 16 up to data 2 there, port 1. And we're going to copy those. Then we're going to paste those. Now let's do this one a little different. Let's see if we can gain a little efficiency. While we have these highlighted, if we go to search, replace, then we can find data 2. Actually, we should be able to find just bracket 2, bracket, and we want to change that to bracket 4 bracket. Hold on, because the highlight doesn't work. One day we already hit that button, otherwise you're going to be upset with me. Is we want to do it from the rung 18 down. So we have a wrap. We're going to uncheck that wrap. And so now we'll replace all, and that's going to change all of those. And then we have 3 right here. So from 26 on, we're going to change 3 to 5, and we'll replace all. And I don't know a cool shortcut for the other side. But on the other side, you're going to have to just go down through here. We're going to do 17, and we should end on 32. And hopefully you landed on 5.7 being port 32. Luckily I did. If you didn't, just go through them and figure out where you might have skipped one. And now, notice we've been working in our logic tab. I now want you to open up your main program and open your main routine. And then the tab to the right of our favorites is add-on, and now we see a Scalance instruction. And let's drag that Scalance instruction down. Now, for this particular add-on instruction, I'll almost argue that this may be the perfect way to do this one, but I want to show a few different ways that I see vendors doing it and how maybe a little compromise might help us out when we're installing these and troubleshooting these. Is under Assets, Add-on Instructions, let's double-click back on our Scalance and go to the Parameters tab. And we can make it where you can see the items on this instruction. And I think this is the perfect one to do it on because I have seen add-on instructions like this. Is I want you to right-click the REQ column and check all. And then click OK. And it's going to give you a warning that, yep, you're getting ready to change some stuff here. We're going to click yes. And I have seen add-on instructions that look just like this. And we scrolling forever. And when someone runs up against this troubleshooting-wise, they really just kind of freeze on us. Now, the other issue with this is when you do it this way, you're actually making it where people have to assign tags. So I would have to really go here and put Ethernet port 1. Well, I don't necessarily need that. So, I'm only using 8 of these ports. No worry, we're going to fix this in the end. I'm just talking through some things I see with vendors. Now let's double click back on the Scalance again. And let's go back to the Parameters tab. And now, because notice when you did right-click and do that, it also checked the visibility. So the REQ checkbox is making it where we're having this blank here that you have to enter something. Let's right-click the REQ again and uncheck all. And notice when you do that, it left the visibility check. Let's click OK to that and see what it looks like. So it'll give us a warning again that we're messing stuff up. And so now it looks a little funky here, but that's because there's a lot of extra garbage. If you actually look here, see all these question marks? That's because we changed that. So let's go ahead and drag another Scalance instruction down. And that makes it look like this. And I see this in vendors also. And it's just like, oh man, I did not really need all this here. So sometimes we really should do a little bit of a compromise here. And so on this one, what I want to do is, I don't need to see all the port statuses here, but maybe want to see just that power source 1 and power source 2, whether they're active. So let's double click back on the Scalance again and go back to the parameters tab. And let's go to the visibility. And this is probably the easiest way on this one. We could uncheck 32 boxes, but we're going to uncheck all, and we're going to check just the top 2 and click OK. And now let's drag it down one more time so we can see that nothing changed. That's going to make it look like this. And I think that makes for a really nice, clean instruction. Now, we're not done quite yet with this one, because now we still have a little bit of issue. So I believe right now this is probably, we would call it the Siemens Master Scalance Instruction, add-on instruction. I don't know what you would call it. But the issue is, if we look into our parameters right now, we're going to have all 32 of these in here. And I have an 8-port switch. And yes, I see vendors doing this too. They're like, well, we want it as universal as possible. But okay, in the end, we don't want our user to have to look through port 9 through 32 when they only have an 8-port switch. So what we're going to do now is we're going to highlight ports 9 through 32. And we're going to right click and we're going to cut them. We'll put them over here on the local tags. So all we've done is made these particular ports so they're only internal to this instruction. She'll give us a warning again. And visibility wise, there's no change here. Now, remember, we're actually creating this. I made you do a separate program for this, so we didn't end up accidentally tying some tags across this add-on instruction. So now where we actually need this add-on instruction is in here. Now, one really cool thing, and yeah, our first time is we're going to do a couple more exercises in this, but our first time, just to show that we can, we're online still. I'm connected. The PLC is running, and if we right click, we could import this instruction. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to go over and we're going to right click our Scalance, and we are going to export add-on instruction. Then I am going to call this my Scalance AOI. And now we can go over here. We'll right click add-on instructions, import. And if we go back to the same spot, then now we're going to have our Scalance AOI. And, actually, I think recently we did find a place that the find and replace was really cool. But for this one, we're just going to click the OK button. I'll let this come in. And while this is coming in, our machine is still running perfectly. And we're going to open up our main routine. Now, be careful which program you're in now, because actually I almost went to the wrong program a second ago. And on the tab to the right, we're going to drag down that Scalance instruction. And I don't know why this one step here is really difficult a lot of times for people, is they see this Scalance and they're like, well, no, it has a name of Scalance. I don't need to do anything. No, every instruction still deserves a name, because you could have tags associated with it. So just for example, if I was to drag down a TON, oh no, hell yeah, right here, I've got to put in, this is my first timer. We realize that. Well, it's the same thing here. You got to give this thing a name. Go ahead and delete that back out. And I'm going to call this my Ethernet status. And after we type words, we have to right click them and new. And park for a second and realize this. Not only have we created an add-on instruction, we've also created what's called a user-defined data type. We'll look at it in just a second. Go ahead and hit create. And now we're going to tell it, where do you want me to get this data from that you're wanting me to do something with? That is going to be our Ethernet switch :I, and you're at go away. And notice this power source, as you're hitting the finalize button, is now we see that our power source 1 is okay, our power source 2 is not. And on your trainer, power source 1 is the one that's wired when it's shipped. Power source 2 is not. So now let's grab a couple wires and let's hook up power source 2. So the bottom one is the plus 24 volt for power source 2. The second from the bottom is the minus of it. So we're going to take a wire from the left set of terminal blocks to M2 and the other one to L2 plus. And when we touch the wire to the L2 plus, we get the power source 2 is good. And this typically would be a second redundant power supply. So one power supply goes out and that lets you know that it has. Now that helps us with our power sources, but we can't see the ports anymore because we took the visibility off of them. But to see those, all we're going to do is right-click Ethernet, and we're going to go to Monitor Ethernet Status, and then hit your arrow to the left of Ethernet Status. And right here is all of your descriptions. Oops, okay, now I forgot to take that subscribe out of this one. So yeah, I hope you subscribe to the channel, but right now it does say subscribe on all of them also. But so we see that we have ports 1 through port 5 with something in them. And if we look here, ports 1 through 5 that have something in them. Now let's do one more step since we have it here before we move on to talking a little bit about source protection is let's just highlight Ethernet status port 1 and we're going to copy it. And then let's go over here and let's bring a new rung down and let's go look for a 1. And we're going to put port 1 status there. Now let's copy that 5 times or however many ports you're actually using on your PLC trainer. And we'll put port 2, port 3, port 4, and port 5. And then let's go ahead and turn our green light on if all these are good. So bring an output energize down. And our trainer is still wired per the getting started guide. So that's going to be local:1:0.data.0. And we'll finalize that. And if we look at the front of our trainer, we now have a green light. And I'll pop this power flex off and I unplug its Ethernet cable. Immediately we know we have an issue because our green light goes out. And if we look here, we see that we lost port 2. All right, next we need to talk about source protection. And when we should use source protection, why we should use source protection, and more importantly, why some of you just need to stop using source protection. And that's important enough that we're going to break it out into this video right here. So click here to learn about it.